Methods. We're sponsored by the Department of Research and Innovation and co-sponsored by the Marcus Orr Center for the Humanities, of course with the help of Sarah Potter, who organizes a lot of events on campus and is the MOCH Director. And Sarah would like everyone to fill out this form saying that you're here.
Yeah, we don't really need your email address unless you want to be on our email list and aren't already. But please write down your name. We have to hand it in with our thing to pay for the food to show that people were here and ate the food. I didn't just throw a party for my friends.
Real people.
Yeah.
So the format of these workshops is very open. We're going to have short presentations, but we have lots of time for questions and especially for comments. We will have time for broader discussion after the presentations, but you should also feel that you can jump in with questions, especially about how things work, or maybe there's something technical that you need an explanation of. So we really do envision these as workshops. If you have a laptop with you, feel free to try out some of the software. As people are talking. Ask questions even about things like installation, because it doesn't really help to have a long list of software programs if you get home and you can't get them installed. For the sake of questions, do try to keep them as brief as possible. This is much less sort of content-oriented and much more focused on how we're going to do things. So today our speakers are Romy Ghanem and Liz Lane from the English department. Romy is an applied linguist who explores topics in speech perception and production, applied phonology, and second language acquisition. Her research focuses on second language speech, interphonology, and different varieties of a language. Her projects have examined issues related to non-native speaker accentedness, the acquisition of language learner phonology, ESL pronunciation, linguistic stereotyping, and phenomenological convergence. Sorry, I'm not a linguist. Her current research explores successful teaching methods of ESL pronunciation and the convergence of Arabic speakers towards a co-created oral form. And our second speaker is Liz Lane. She teaches courses in technical and professional writing. Her research focuses on feminist activism in the digital sphere and the rhetoric of social justice. She has research interests in new media, gender and technology, and multimodal composition. Her ongoing projects include investigating design thinking as a tool to bring social justice issues into the TPC classroom, the rhetorical impact of online feminist activist movements, and an inaugural journal to highlight activist work in the field of rhetoric and writing studies.
So I'm going to start. Well, first, this is what our workshop's going to be about. We already have a Google site, like our own website for this workshop. If you are on Melanie's list, then she's already emailed that to you, so you can kind of access it, or you can just kind of check this URL down, because we have all the information on there, including all the software that you need to download and stuff like that. So first we're going to talk about just defining the field. I'm going to talk about online corporate tools, and then Liz is going to talk more about social media aggregation tools and data visualization tools. So to begin with, what exactly is corpus linguistics? A lot of people, when I try to tell them that I use corpus linguistic methods, they automatically shut down and they think I don't do linguistics, so I'm definitely not going to be able to follow. But corpus linguistics is more of a method, and what they usually do, corpus linguists do, is they try to examine language variation in particular contexts, right? And then you can tell me, well, that's what everybody does. We all look at language variation in different contexts. How are these people different? So the way that they're different is that they look at really large number of texts, right? So that's what makes an actual corpus, okay? So it's a large number of texts. Now, a lot of people kind of assume that, okay, so if I just take all of my students' writing in the past 10 years and I put them in one kind of folder, is that a corpus? Yes and no. So it is kind of a compilation of text, but when we call something a corpus, it has to be according to a very systematic way of choosing the corpora and choosing the text. So you have to have a set of guidelines, like what exactly are you looking at, right? So let's say, for instance, you want to look at journal articles. You want to look at research journal articles. So you can't automatically take all the that were actually submitted or published by this journal, because some of these could be book reviews, for instance, right? Which is not exactly a journal article or research article. Others could be something like a letter to the editor. Those are not journal art, you know what I mean? So it has to be more systematic. I'm just going to show you a sample of like a guideline for how, so this is actually a learner corpus, so people who speak English as a second language and how they basically write certain essays or papers, whatever. So as you can see here, these are the set of guidelines in order to actually be admitted into this corpus. It's just an example of what people look at. But of course I can give you more details. So how is it beneficial to digital humanities? Obviously, it makes the access to large bodies of text more accessible. It also gives a more accurate representation of the language, right? Because you can say that something appears, let's say that people use the word examine very often, and so I ask you, so how often are you talking about, in what context? And you say, oh yeah, I just looked at 50 of my students, right? So that's a very small representation, right? But we want a more accurate representation. So that's what a corpus does. How do we use corpus linguistics? So there are two main methods. Of course, there are other ways that we could do so, but the two basic methods are, one is you look at a corpus that was already established or kind of put together. So there are many on the web, well, on the internet. And what you can do is you can kind of formulate a research question that could be answered using that corpus. Okay, and I'll give you examples in a second. The good thing is that there are many free online corpora that you can access. Of course, there are others that you need to kind of pay to access certain parts of them, but the ones that are free are very well built, and most of them are over 100 million words, so it's good access. Or you can create your own corpus, and you can then use some text analysis mining tools or software in order to look at certain things in your corpus. So what I'm going to do in this workshop is I'm going to show you examples of both. Okay? So let's start with the online available corpora. All of these are free. Some of them have both written and spoken language. Others have only spoken language. I just wanted to show you the BYU, the Birmingham Young list of corpora because it's the most prolific in corpus linguistics. As you notice, the ILEP, which is basically everything that has been published on the internet, so online, it has 14 billion words. So if you kind of just wanted to look at certain research questions that relate to online text, this is your corpus. The newest ones are actually the TV and movie corpus, and both of these are the least formal forms of corpora out there. So if you have ESL students, or if you have students who are English is not their first language, and they kind of want to see how is language being used in real life, right? So the least formal way, that would be a good kind of resource for them. What we're going to look at today is the COCA, which is the Corpus of Contemporary American English. This particular corpus is actually about 560 million words. It's the reason why people use it, even though it's not the largest, but the reason why most people use it is because it's the most representative of contemporary American English. And so basically what you see here is the web page that allows you to search for that in that particular group. So if you Google just COCA, and I apologize for the Spanish speakers because COCA means something else in Spanish, but so if you just Google COCA and you write corpus, if you want to use your laptops, feel free to do so, because we're going to look at some things that we can do with this particular corpus. Okay, so what are some of the things that I could look at? So let's say, for instance, that I want to see the historical progression of a certain word. Like, when did that word first appear in the English language, and particularly in American English language, okay? So one thing that I looked at was the word Google, because Google is certainly a newish word, right? And so what I would do is go to chart, and I'll explain what the chart is. So I go to chart, and I just type in Google and then see frequency by section. And you're going to see what the sections are in a second. And just click. All right, so as you can see here, the sections are spoken, fiction, magazine, newspaper, and academic. Now, what I found interesting was before 1995, there was no mention of Google whatsoever, right, in this particular corpus. And obviously, there's a reason for that, because Google was not, it was not as common. And even when we looked here, that one instant was actually the last name of a person. So it wasn't even, so the use actually started right here, and as you can see, it increased over time. The only reason why this is less is because it's only 2 years versus 4. One thing I want to mention that I just remembered, so Coca is free up to like 10 entries, and then you have to register. It's still free after you register. The only thing is that you have to identify yourself as either faculty member or a student or somehow researcher or anything like that. So you have to kind of give information. And then if you are affiliated with a university, you have to provide a web page that shows that you are affiliated with that university. So either your own web page on the university website, it has to be a .edu website, which I think might be problematic for some students who don't have kind of access to their own web page or their name appearing in a university website. But one thing that we thought about looking into, Liz and I, is the academic license isn't that expensive. It's about $700 for like open access to everyone. So it's something that we're still considering about providing for the university and finding ways in which to do so. Okay, so that was for chart. Now another thing that you could look at would be collocates. And so by definition, it's what words kind of appear close to a particular word of your choice, right? So for instance, if I say, let's say academic, what's one word that you think of that comes after academic? Academic, right, academic.
Life.
What's that? Life, academic research, academic jobs, stuff like that. So what it does is try to show the kind of the most frequent words that collocate with the particular word that you choose. So one thing that I thought was interesting was to look at, for instance, how are women or men described? So what adjectives usually are collocated with women or men in different kind of various subcorpora? So what I would do is I would type in women. That's the phrase that I'm looking at, right? And then, so here, this is where you can kind of do stuff with what collocates you want to look at. So POS is part of speech, okay? So you can either do just any POS, any part of speech, verb, adjective, adverb, noun, whatever it is that collocates with nouns. But if you want to look at, for instance, things that describe women, I'd probably look at adjectives, right? The good thing is that the newest form of COCA doesn't require you to type in any like fancy, coding. It actually has them for you. So what you would do is you would click on POS, and you would select all the adjectives, right? Now here, this is, the blue square is actually where the word is. Okay, so that's women. So do you want the words that come before the word women or after the word women? Now since we're looking at adjectives and it's the English language, they're probably going to be before, okay? So we kind of mute the after by clicking on 0, and then you can do like just to see like what or how women are. And then if you want, which is something that I'm always interested in, to look at the subcorpora. So you can look, for instance, okay, so how are they described in fiction, and then how are they described in the news, right? So that's another thing that you could do. And then you just click on find. So, as you notice, and these are obviously the words that come right before women. So in fiction, you have like the description of women, like adjectives that basically describe physical appearance or anything like that, or even social. So strange, respectable, big, old, decent, blonde, etc. Whereas here in newspapers, it's more about like a social attribute or their nationality or something like that. So Olympic, Afghan, Saudi, middle class, Anglo, etc. So these are just examples of how you can kind of use this to do some sort of research with it, or to just show your students, especially if you're teaching like a writing class, for instance. One thing that I do with my students is I try to kind of show them, and I'm going to show you now, I try to show them the difference between certain kind of academic words and certain not so academic words, right? So an example would be provide versus give, okay? So I try to have them kind of do this research on their own. I give them the words and I tell them, tell me what happens in academic text with this word and what happens with kind of spoken text with this word. So just to give you, so give, and then I would do provide. And here I'm going to cancel the part of speech because I just want to look at everything. And so I want to look at what comes afterwards. And then usually in COCA, the most academic or the most formal subcorpus is actually academic, right there. And then the least formal one is spoken. So if my students are kind of struggling with when is something academic and when is something not, I tell them compare these words between spoken and academic. Okay? So they would do this on their own. And so I would compare the words. Yeah, it does that every time you're on a free kind of license. So it just kind of takes a little bit of a while, just to encourage you to pay for it. And then it tells you to continue. So, you know, awkward silence over there. Oh, there we go. There. So I've tried this before, and because they're like, okay, so can I use like give? I want to give this, I want to give that, and I said, okay, let's see the differences. And if you look here, give away, give out, give up, give back, etc. These are more kind of, I would say, idiomatic with give versus give, provide funds, provide electricity, provide services, provide bases. This is more like verb object. So I would encourage my students, okay, use verb object with provide, and this is like the example that I would give them. They would actually go and look it up themselves. Another thing that I would do is look at the charts and look at give and spoken versus academic and see which one kind of wins. Usually when it does that, I just reset everything. And like I said, when it's free, it's going to be buggy. So spoken versus academic. So I just went back to chart, and then I just wrote down give, just my word. And then I wanted to see the difference between spoken versus academic. And then just show the frequency by section. So as you can see, technically give is used most often in spoken, not in academic. So that's how I kind of basically give them proof. Because they're like, how do you know which of these two words to use? And so it's like, well, look it up and see, is it used in academic or is it used in spoken? Of course, these are subcorpora. This is not everywhere in the entire kind of English language, but this is 560 million words. So it is a representative corpus. And by the way, all the different subcorpora, all the different kind of like spoken fiction, magazine, newspaper, and academic have at least 20 million words to represent them. So they're kind of at an E. So that's all I'm going to talk about in terms of COCA for now, because I want to move on to NCONC, which is when you have your own corpus and you kind of want to look into that. So I'm going to move on to that, and then at the end of that, if you have any questions, we can go back to it. Okay, so if you actually go to Google again and kind of just click on or search NCONC, so it's ANTCONC. And NCONC refers to Lawrence Anthony, and CONC refers to a concordancer. And a concordancer is basically a text mining software. It's free completely. It doesn't remind you to pay. but you can donate for certain purposes. The one thing about NConc is that it can only read text files. So these are WordPad files, okay, or NConc files. So what I usually do is if I have, so what I'm going to show you right now is a corpus of my dissertation data, which is spoken data with like pauses and like intonation, all that information in there. I actually transcribe them on Word document, and then I just copied and pasted into WordPad and then just saved them. Okay, that's basically what I did. Okay, so what you could do is you go to File, and you can either open individual files or you can open a folder. Okay, so that would be Open Directory. And it would show you the files on the left, right here. Okay, so I chose 20 files, obviously a very, very tiny corpus, just to show you kind of examples of things that we could do. Okay, so this is actually your own corpus that you're actually trying to look into certain words or certain ideas. So certain things that you can find. One thing that I like about it is the concordance plot. This particular corpus included kind of a conversation between two individuals. They started with getting to know one another for about 3 minutes, and then after that they engaged in an opinion-based task. So they had to convince each other about something, right? But for the first 3 minutes it was just like, what's your name, what do you like to do, where are you from, all that stuff. And then they started kind of trying to convince. So for me, I wanted to see where exactly things that represent opinion start to appear. So a word like agree, for instance, so I agree or disagree, is probably going to appear later on in the text. So I want to see that visually. So what you would do is you would go to concordance plot, and so I would type in agree. And as you notice, it actually gives you the hits. So that's where agree actually appears in my files. And the interesting thing is that it tells you which file that is. So that's file 6, 7, 8, 9, etc. And it tells you where that word or string of words appears. Now, if you kind of want to see the context, like, okay, so where exactly, what exactly happened before or after that word, then you can just click on that and it just shows you. Does that make sense? Okay. Other things that you can do, we already talked about collocates, so I'm gonna move to something else. One thing that you can do is you can generate a word list. So just to give you an idea, P is actually for pause. So you notice that P is the highest, because obviously they pause a lot. Then there's yeah, you, the, I. These are just my codings, but then that and no, etc. So you can kind of generate word lists for a particular corpus. What you could also do is you can generate word lists per text. And then if you have like a number of students and they do different drafts, you can actually compare the first draft to the second draft by generating word lists and trying to see if they've actually kind of used more of something or less of something. One thing that you might find interesting is that there's word types versus word tokens. So word types would be all these different, so yeah, you, the, etc. is word types. And the tokens is just all of the words, like the number of words that were actually included. So yeah was actually included twice. So that means it's one word type, but 2 word tokens, right? Oh, sorry, frequency 1157. So it's one word type, but the token is actually 1157. So you can even see if they're repeating themselves, right? So repetition also appears there. Let's see, what else did I want to look at? One thing that you could do here, let's say that you want to look up if they're using certain derivatives of a particular word. So let's say that you want to look at if they're using the idea of teaching. So teach would be teach, teacher, teaching, teachers, teaches, all these different, but you kind of want to see it at the same time. So instead of writing all these words next to each other or writing them kind of multiple times, what you could do is you could actually look at teach, and then you put a little asterisk after it. Did I put the H in there? Yeah. So you put a little asterisk after it, And what it does, as you notice, there's teaches, teacher, and then down there, teachers, and then all the way, teaching, like teaching, knowledge. The other thing is that it actually gives you the keyword in context, so it provides you with the actual line in which it appeared. So these would be the words that come after it. It would be interesting if you're just kind of interested in what do they use after teacher, and it actually highlights in red the first word that comes after it, right? One thing that I do with that when I look at, for instance, especially when I look at spoken corpus, so if you look at think, so it's all think about, and then right here, you notice that a lot of people say I think and they pause, right? So that's something I would look at and say, oh, interesting that we all say, oh, we can, I think, and then they just stop, right? So that's something that I would look at in my research, okay? And usually it's interesting because when they do that, they're trying to come up with a very complex kind of grammatical construction after, because these are all non-native speakers. One thing that I forgot to show you in Coca, because I just remembered in the colors. One thing that Coca also does is, so Coca has everything tagged, grammatically tagged, which means that every single word has a part of speech allocated to it. So every word that appears here, the software actually knows if it's a verb, it's a noun, it's an adjective, it's an adverb, etc. So let's say that I want to look at what comes after the verb give in terms of just part of speech. So let's just ignore this and just look at it in general. Okay, so if you look to the left and to the right, you'll see, so usually in blue is nouns, and then the orange are adverbs, the green are adjectives, the purple are obviously verbs, and so you can even visually look at what comes around this particular word, especially if you, let's say, give is a ditransitive verb, and you want to show them that two nouns would usually follow it, for instance, and you kind of try to find it in a visual form. You could also save the list if you want to show it to your students, if you kind of don't want them to, or you don't have access to the internet in your classroom, all these different things that you basically do. I'm going to do one last thing in NCOM, and then I'll leave it to Liz. So one more thing that you could do if you want to look up a word. You actually want to look up two words, and you don't care if either or appears. So you want to look up, for instance, if this particular corpus has both men or women in it. So what you can do is you put this like dividing slash in there, and you enter, women or men, and so you get both if men appears and if women appears. In that case. All right, I'm going to stop here because I think I was fine. I'm going to leave it. I'm going to.
Thank you. Okay, yeah, like Romy said, we definitely want to have ample time for discussion and questions at the end. And so what I'm going to talk about here in this portion of the workshop is just a small aspect of my research looking into social media hashtags, specifically feminist activist hashtags, and how I plotted them and kind of looked at their trends using free tools online. So I do want to point out quickly before I kind of dive in, where's the mouse? I'm a Mac user, can you tell? Okay, I want to point out our Google site again. So if you want to go to the site, we have sample data sets up there that you can download and play with while we're talking. And then there are also just links to all the tools we're going to be talking about too. So I know it's kind of a long URL. I tried to shorten it, but the shortest I can get it. And our slideshow is up there too, so if you want to download that, you can do that. I'll leave that up for 30, no, 15 seconds. And then I'll point out exactly where this is on the site. Yes. We have links to our tools today, and Romy's tools are here, Coca and Conk, and then I'm going to be talking about something called Netalic today. And the link is right there, and then below these two tools are sample data sets, which are, I've got to make it visible, make it public then, I guess, so I'll do that. There's also additional links to other resources. This isn't updated. Okay, we'll fix this. And then our slideshow is down there. So yeah, I just want to point out I'm going to be talking about Netalic today, which is a tool I kind of stumbled across when I was doing my dissertation research. And you may or may not be familiar with social media analysis tools, but they can be quite expensive. Just to kind of give you an idea, if you're researching Twitter, for example, if you want to study a certain hashtag movement or certain users or certain networks within Twitter, access to the Twitter API starts at $10,000. So if you have grant funding, awesome, you can probably spend that money. But a lot of researchers have started looking for free tools to do these sorts of analyses. And so I found a couple tools, and I'm actually going to show you where I found them before I kind of, again, jump in. There's this school in Canada, Ryerson University, that has this wonderful social media lab. And they collect and crowdsource free tools that you can use for social media analysis. So this link is also on our Google site to the Ryerson Social Media Lab, but it's wonderful because it tells you, well, this tool is helpful for Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Or if you're looking to do analysis and data visualization, you might want to look into Node.xl. It's helpful for these purposes. So they've really done a lot of the legwork in kind of collecting and charting out these tools for you. Yes, NIP is something I've also used too. That's helpful. So you just see a lot of sharing of a lot of these tools online. And so because these data sets can be quite cost prohibitive, a lot of researchers have started scraping social media data and just making it available online and sharing it and kind of bending the rules there, which is fun. Okay, so why study social media and social networks using Corpus Linguistics? It can be a great way just to kind of create your own data, especially if you're looking into something like I am, like specific hashtag movements. I'm really interested in studying hashtag movements as rhetorical circulatory tools, giving a sense for how certain moments or kairotic environments, like certain catalysts are causing people to post about things on social media. So, for example, I researched and am researching still the Yes All Women movement, the Say Her Name movement, different social justice movements and how people are just kind of talking about them on social media. So, these free tools are a great way to kind of zoom in on specific moments and get a sense for what's happening online in different networks. Yes, API, as you can see there, stands for Application Programming Interface. It's basically the under the hood look at different social media networks, and you can apply to different social media networks to get access to their API, but it's a pretty lengthy process. So, as a workaround, using Corpus Linguistics and free tools is a handy way to get access to these insights in this research. So, I'm going to just kind of talk about how I use these tools to study patterns, trends, what I call rhetorical markers, but what folks in other disciplines might call linguistic markers or trends and things like that. And then also I'm going to kind of briefly walk through how to map and visualize some of these findings, just really simply today. So, these are just a small, this is a small list of things I have used to kind of track different social media movements. And so I'm going to be talking about today, this one in green here. The thing about a lot of these tools is it requires a little bit of coding know-how. It can be quite easy to get started with something like Netalic and Google Tabs, and maybe even in vivo, and just kind of ease your way into it. But some of these tools are also pretty hefty as far as what you have to do to dive into them. A lot of people use Python, for example, to study social media networking movements, and that is pretty coding heavy. Google Tags, someone created this wonderful script that works with Google Sheets, and so you can set this script to track different hashtags, and that's free and open. You just Google Tags. Other things you can use to visualize the data that you find, and I'll show you how that kind of works together a bit later. R and R Studio, and the Tableau and in Vivo, which are pretty detailed data visualization tools, but at University of Memphis, we have access to both R and in Vivo through the U of M apps, Citrix Receiver program, which is really helpful because they can be, again, cost prohibitive upfront. Tableau has licenses available for students and scholars, and I think a free trial too if you want to kind of really play around it. I know some of you are kind of familiar with this, and these are helpful for both qualitative and quantitative research, but I just kind of included here that I think in Vivo, I just use this for a research project, is the best for qualitative research and mapping and making sense of qualitative data. They all have their pros and cons. Okay, so what I'm going to be walking through, and you can feel free to click along with me as I'm walking you through Nettalik and how to get going with that. I'm going to walk you through how to get this kind of analysis, this kind of look at a data set. Basically applying corpus linguistics to social networking or social network movements and kind of getting a sense for what people are saying about a certain topic, what kind of trends and patterns are emerging around what people are posting with a certain hashtag and things like that. So this is just a sample of one of my searches I did for, I believe, the Yes All Women movement. Yeah, and this was run in 2016. You can see the dates are up here. So a while ago, and this was, around the time of the 2016 election. So there were some really interesting patterns emerging around these posts. And a lot of really interesting mentions people were making. So people were mentioning Hillary Clinton and FLOTUS. And so as a rhetorical scholar, that's really interesting to me. I'm really fascinated by what people are pulling into these conversations and how the kind of cultural moment is taking shape or is being shaped by these conversations. So I'm going to, let's see here. Yes. So just kind of a quick rundown about Nettalik. You can create a free account. You can sign in with Google or Yahoo. And on our Google site, like I said, we have a sample data set that you can download there, and I'll show you how to upload that. But I'm also going to show you how to kind of set Nettalik to track and create your own data set just really quickly. And we were going to talk about R&R Studio today, but we want to talk and have a discussion instead of talking at you more. So what I'm going to do now is just kind of walk you through Nettalik and kind of show you how to get a data set going and tracking it. So it's free. You can track up to 5 different data sets of 2,500 records, which is pretty good for free, and then you have to start paying for it. So it's free to register, and I encourage all of you to do this, or if you want to click along with this, please do that with us. So yes, like you can see here, this is kind of your dashboard. You can track 5 data sets. I have 4 running right now, and I'm tracking them all on Twitter because that's specifically what I was looking at for my dissertation research and what I'm kind of doing with ongoing research too. You'll get a check mark appearing next to your data set when it has reached the 2,500 record cap and when the data collection is complete. So Nettalik is really good for checking in on certain moments of hashtag movements or social media movements and just kind of getting, like I said, a really zoomed in view of what's happening at the moment. You can, of course, delete your data set. You can create a sub-data set with the same time period that you maybe previously searched. You can share your data sets. It will download them as a CSV file for Excel or Google Sheets. You can edit your data set collection because data is always very complicated. So you can delete duplicates or violent text or something like that, inappropriate text. You can export your data again and just delete it. So if I were to start tracking a new data set, I'm going to click on new data set. I'm going to just show you what's possible here. So you can see you can track Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, which is new and cool. Nettalik is great about giving you information about the API and policies for each social network, so you can kind of get a sense for what's possible just with this free version here. I do want to note that whatever social media platform you are studying, you need to link your own profile there. So you can see I've linked my Twitter account here. If I were to click to Facebook, it would ask for me to allow Nettalik access to my Facebook account. So I basically have a portal into the network to study it, right? Also available and also options here, you can upload data sets to Nettalik. So the sample data sets that we have on our Google site, you can upload them here. You can also upload a text file or CSV file or RSS. So it's pretty flexible and it lets you do quite a bit just for a free version. They also have some great tutorials here. They're a little dated, but it's better than nothing. But it's pretty user-friendly, I would say, overall. So let's just kind of run a sample data set here. So I'm really interested in, like I said, feminist activist movements. Kind of a funny story, I was studying feminist activism. I defended my dissertation in June 2017, and Me Too happened in October 2017. So I was just ahead, I missed it. So I'm still trying to catch up and study Me Too data. So I want to study Me Too, and I'm going to name this data set, hashtag Me Too data set, and then I set my search terms. So my recommendation here is to start broad, and you can always go back and change your search terms and make them more specific. So I just specifically want to look at hashtag Me Too post. Oops. And again, it's going to cap you at 2,500 records. Nettalik will run every 15 minutes, and it says here it'll give you the 1,000 most recent tweets. So you can expect to get quite a big chunk of data pretty early on. Okay, so once I've set my search terms, and you can also search for usernames. If you know there's a certain prolific tweeter or poster, you can search for them. You can search for other keywords as well, and Nettalik gives you a list of those. That's pretty handy too. So I'm going to click import to start collecting my data. And there's always a bit of a few second wait while it loads. Okay, so it'll tell you, okay, yes, we were able to process and retrieve 1,000 records from Me Too. There are no errors. But I do want to point out, if you decide you want to search for other keywords or other trends, you can always go back and add them by clicking add more to this data set. Okay, and so it basically says, here's what we're doing. We're skipping duplicates, which are retweets or posts from the same user that are the same thing, which is helpful because that takes a lot of time to weed out of your data as well. Okay, and I'm going to click next step here, and this is where the fun really happens. So you get a preview of the data that you were able to scrape just kind of quickly using Nettalik. It shows you the first 100 records, so you can see if in fact you're searching for the right thing. Like, okay, yes, I see that these are related to women. There's some posts about R. Kelly, and there's some posts about the Oscars. Okay, this seems like this is some pertinent Me Too conversation happening here. So you can just kind of preview it, make sure you're on the right track. And then from there, you can actually export all of your 1,000 records here, or you can do it later on, and I'll show you how to do that. So if you click on text analysis, this is where I think it's really super fun, and this is where a lot of illuminating stuff comes out. Yes, okay, so under text analysis, you have keyword extractors. You can click analyze, and it'll basically queue your data to run and recognize common keywords that are showing up in these posts, which is super helpful. And you can actually specify this based on the description of the post, the language, the location, the publication date, all kinds of different markers to see what's common in this data. But what I'm really interested in is how people are talking about Me Too, what kind of feelings are emerging from these conversations. So this is where the manual categories option is really helpful. So if I click on create and edit categories, Nettalik has some preset linguistic categories, basically, that it scans data for. So appearance, good and bad feelings, harassment, positive and negative linguistic markers, quantity shape, et cetera, women. And you can add new phrases and terms here, so you can customize what categories you want to look for. So I think that's really interesting. I'm actually going to add beautiful. Oh, oops, okay. Okay. Well, it'll be fine. Okay, so I can close the edit categories feature, and I click analyze, and it'll basically run through the different categories. Okay, and you're thinking, wait, did it work? Yes, it did. If you click on visualize, And I do want to note you need Flash Player for this to work. You need to download Flash on your computer or your browser. This is where you can actually go in and kind of zoom in on a specific post. So, okay, I'm curious, what are some good positive feelings people are sharing around the YouTube movement? If I click on that, I can see there are 54 posts and 58 terms that Nettalik kind of flagged as related to good feelings. And so you can kind of go in and look at, okay, brave or happy. What are people saying about bravery in Me Too just right now? And this is where I think you see some interesting overlaps in what Romeo is sharing, right? You can see when certain terms appeared before or after the word brave. Let's see. Okay, interesting. Miss Andrea Bounds, maybe this is a unique example like that. Me Too is at it again as brave former Trump campaign worker comes forward. You can kind of see the full tweet. You can see when it was posted, the username, so on and so forth. So you really get a sense of the context going on there, which I think is really fascinating. So this is what I kind of analyze for my research and what I look at. What are people saying about this current trend? What's happening right now? Likewise, what are some bad feelings surrounding the Me Too movement? Well, probably quite a few. Are people angry? Yes, 2 people right now. The data that we gathered are angry. Someone about making a false rape accusation. So there's some sensitivity, of course, in these topics, but it really gives you an interesting look into what's happening, what the trends and rhetorical moves are in these different movements right now. So, in the interest of time, I'm going to exit out of that and show you what else Nettalik can do as far as your data sets. So that's just the text analysis, and you have a lot of different options here. You can choose word clouds. You can see how common Me Too is, and these 1,000 records. So we have 911 hashtag Me Too's in those 1,000 records. Brooklyn 99, interesting. And you see, it gives you kind of a screenshot or a snapshot of what's happening. Okay, if you click on network analysis, this is where if you're interested in seeing how people are interacting with one another based on this specific hashtag movement, that's where you can kind of look at that detail. Again, it takes you a bit of time if you want to analyze what people are saying, but the cool thing is Nettalik gives you these preset data visualization. So you can kind of look closely at nodes of a network and how different users are interacting with one another, different usernames. They cluster them together for you. So I could spend hours kind of diving into this, but I just want to show you, again, what's possible. You can change the layout. You can change the size of the nodes. You can kind of zoom in and zoom out on different clusters and different communities within this hashtag, which is really fascinating. Okay, and then finally, after text and network analysis, you can click on reports, and Nettalik will give you, if there's geotagged data related to user posts, that'll show up here on the map and show you where users are posting. It'll show you the top 10 posters. It'll show you trends over time, which is interesting. This isn't quite displaying correctly, but it'll show you kind of the ebb and flow of posts related to a certain movement. Frequent words, again. So we can see here sexuality, watch, violence, children, things we might expect to find with hashtag #MeToo. And any images that people post along with that hashtag will also be collated here as well. So that's Nettalik in a nutshell. And I found it to be the most useful social media analysis tool for my purposes. I think it's helpful. But again, I want to point to the Ryerson Social Media Lab because there are just so many options here for whatever you might be interested in studying. I also want to point out too, I mentioned, where is it? All these other tools that you might use for visualization, mapping, things like that. In Vivo and R in RStudio, if you look or if you search for the University of Memphis apps through the Citrix receiver, y'all probably know how to find this. But just to know how to get to them,
Just search for U of M.
Is it my login for U of M?
There's in Vivo a great qualitative analysis. So,
No, any U of M.
in the interest of time, we want to open it up to discussion and questions. Please pick our brains or let us know if we need to go back over anything in more detail. We definitely want to kind of continue this conversation and hear what y'all are interested in too. So, thank you.
I have a quick question for you. Netlytic looked really cool. Was there an ability to control the date range? I think you got 1,000 hits on one day.
Yeah.
You got no trends, you know,
Yeah.
when you try to look at trends, can you control date ranges and everything on that? And then,
Yes.
I guess, ask for even distribution across those dates?
If you pay for an account like a pro account, you can't control the date range, yeah.
Okay, so Netlytic will let you do that.
Yes, and I believe NIP, the GNIP, another one of the programs listed on the Ryerson site, also lets you control date ranges too. Yeah, you can do that within Twitter to an extent. You know, you can do an advanced search, but Netlytic and NIP really let you kind of dive in and really constrain that as well.
Does the graphing tool like specify different types of users and everything in Netlytic?
Yes, yes, you can. I was just kind of breezing through it, but
Cool,
yes,
yeah,
you can
that's awesome.
go back into it and make a more detailed search. Thank you.
Does Netlytic allow you to, does it show relationships between tweets, like tiers where retweet and sharing relationships, or does it treat them all as equivalent?
It does make that distinction. So, in the sample data set I uploaded this, into it. So, if you download the data as a CSV file, yes, you can distinguish and make those separations in an Excel spreadsheet or in a Google spreadsheet. I guess I need to give you access to that. Okay. Well, yes, you can go back and manipulate the data and kind of show those patterns, yeah, manually. And there are more sophisticated tools that you can pay for to do that. But I think it's fun to kind of dig into it.
The software that you showed, it's just English, right? Are there other ones that incorporate other languages?
Actually, sorry, I forgot to mention that NCOM does a lot of different languages, including Japanese, Chinese, and Korean.
Okay.
So yeah, it's not English specific. COCA, on the other hand, is only American English, but there are there's actually, BYU has a Spanish and a Portuguese corpus, and there are, I think, a Chinese corpus that's out there as well. So yeah, the free ones are definitely online, but the software, I think, works with most languages.
Which one? Which?
And the one,
Okay,
so the
okay.
one that I actually use my own corpus for, that one works with different languages.
Okay. Also, so you import text
Yeah.
for it to be able to. So how would you pull something to be converted into that? Like, say, so you did your dissertation, right? Can you use this for like? Is this only online, or like can you like convert like, I don't know, like a book or something that you're?
Oh, no. So the software itself, you just download, it's actually an executable file, which means that you can even have it on your flash drive or whatever and take it wherever with you. So it doesn't even have to be completely downloaded on your own laptop or computer. But for you to kind of convert whatever, you know, like a book or something like that, then I think there are certain conversion like software that could do like a whole like book from PDF to text that I haven't worked with it because I do Word documents, and usually it's very easy to just copy and paste if you just select all and copy and paste. But I'm pretty sure, just like you can convert from like Word to PDF or PDF to Word, there are other converters that you can do from PDF to like text.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was wondering if other people in the room have used, I mean, you know, that like different kind of data sets. Like I know that I've used, again, it's not any of these tools, but like the New York Times, I think they got rid of it. But for a while, the New York Times had a historical analog. Like, so I'm a historian, right? So I'm interested in you know, older texts, or at least, you know, 20th century. But you know, the New York Times had this great thing where you could find, you know, when things were mentioned in the Times. I'm curious, like people know of other sort of data sets that would be useful for those of us in other fields.
There's actually COHA, which is the corpus of historical American.
Oh, okay.
So, and I think IMAX did it right here.
Oh, it was in that list, yeah, of the
Yeah,
from BYU. Yeah. Okay.
okay, there it is. So COHA.
I think there's an online corpus of Shakespeare's writing. I have a colleague who wrote a paper.
Ebo has all of it.
Yeah, there are other like
What was-
literary
what is
types.
Yeah, Eagle has pretty much everything in early modern, British lit.
Corpus is historical. Luckily, it's like I don't know.
So what's in the COPA?
I personally haven't used it, but I'm thinking it's actually older, so it's, I think, from the 1800s. So yeah, right there. So from 1810 to 2000. Yeah, and it has 400 million words, which is why I directed you to this one, because the other ones, yes, they do have like Shakespeare and whatnot, but this one is actually the largest
Yeah.
online free kind of historical American English corpus.
Right, and that's interesting. Like the time one also would be interesting to cultural historians.
Yeah.
So we actually, I'm the director of the Institute for Intelligent Systems. We maintain a membership of the Linguistics Data Consortium. We have done continuously since 2015, and we have a few years before that. And so if you go on their website, they list huge numbers of corpuses, which are document corpuses rather than words. And if you need access to those, our license actually applies to anyone at the university.
Oh, really?
So, for example, the New York Times archived the modern one from 2008 through 2013. We own that corpus and get access to anyone.
Okay.
So if you go on that site and see any corpus that you're interested in, there are lots of foreign language corpuses. There's spoken word. Just contact me and I can get you access.
Yeah, so this is useful. This is always what we just discover at these workshops, it seems, that there's all these tools no one even knew that the university was paying for already.
Yeah, I would say I spent a good 2.5 months just looking for the right tool to help me analyze this, and then I found there's an entire community of people online that, and the Ryerson University list. If you're at all interested in social media analysis, there's a great listserv to join called the Association of Internet Researchers, AIR. They actually just started a Discord group, like a chat community to share different tools and ideas. So yeah, these connections are happening all the time. And don't reinvent the wheel. There are definitely people out there who've done the same thing. Yeah.
I'm a research assistant professor here in the IIS, and I also do text analysis for local and social research. I launched a website in the fall called Quanttext, QUANTTEXT, and we also have a repository of lots of different tools that are available. That's been aggregated in that one place. Awesome. It's also a kind of networking hub for people who are working on text analysis to see who else is doing it.
Liz, could you talk a little bit about R? I feel like in digital humanities it always comes up, and then it's such a big topic, but could you explain a little bit?
Yes. So R, where is it? R is basically a command prompt portal. So it's a little coding heavy, but it's a great way to import quantitative data and quickly visualize it. So on our Google site, I actually uploaded a guide for beginners here. I wish we had time to kind of go into it, but it's a can of worms, I'm not gonna lie. It could take 2 workshops. But basically, this will walk you through installing different data and then running different commands using R. It looks a lot like AntConc, like what Romy was showing, as far as like manipulating and interacting with data. And so it's a great way if you have just like an Excel spreadsheet of a bunch of data that you were able to collect. It's a great way to quickly visualize it without getting super fancy. So you can create bar graphs and plots using different commands. So that guide is listed here on our site, and I think if you're curious at all about that, that is a good way to kind of get started using it. Where is it here? Oh yeah. So we have access to R Studio and R, same thing. But I've experienced working with R Studio through U of M. And yeah, you can kind of see what the interface looks like here. Okay. So basically, yes, you can import data and then give the portal different commands to tell it how to manipulate the data. So plots, packages. There's also a lot of built-in data with R, Like the guide I just showed you works with motor trend automotive data, so that is built into R, so you can kind of play around with different data if you don't have your own and kind of give a sense for how it works. So.
It is free, so you can download it to your own computer, which is much faster than using it through the.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, thank you for mentioning that, because yes, on our Google site, I do have a link to the R website. You can download it for free as well. And yeah, that'll work a lot faster than the Citrix receiver portal as well. So I hope that answered your question.
Yes.
Yeah. Maybe we should do another visualization workshop. Other questions? We have our emails up here. If you want to reach out, yes.
So one of the things that the IAS tries to do is to link computational scientists with social scientists who have needs. We actually have professional developers that we employ that we can, eventually we have to pay them somehow, but they're actually available to help you start off projects and get things going. So Twitter, for example, they don't give you access to all of it, but they do give you access to about 10% of all the tweets continuously for free. But you have to scrape them as they come because they disappear at the end of the... so we have experience running Twitter scrapers. We've experienced getting data from North Korea, or that turns out to be much harder because every 2 days the scripts break as the North Koreans block you. And you also have to be careful because then the Chinese start searching your computer. It's a security problem.
I would love to talk more about that.
So I have cards, I'll leave them out there.
Yes,
if you
please.
get in touch.
Great. Great, okay, so if there's no more questions, thank you guys so much. That was so helpful. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
For those of you who came in late, please take some cookies and coffee. Take cookies and coffee.
Your question?